What an introduction. Thank you so much. It's great to be back here. We were here in 2020 for LoneStar Elixir. It was the last conference that most people attended before COVID shut everything down. This was our fabulous shirt, and it's the Austin bat. But the funny thing is, when I had the logo printed on just the bat. I had the logo printed on some cups for our speakers. In their great wisdom, the company that put the cups together flipped the bat, so it wasn't hanging upside down. And early organizer mistake. I did not look at them before we got to Austin and open them up to assemble the bags the night before I was giving them to the speakers. And I'm like, oh, wow, here we go. So that was a funny, awful moment for us to have messed something up. So I am delighted to be here with you. I am the least likely person to be up here, for real. I like to stay in the background. I don't like crowds, and I have some proof. So I planned my kids' birthday parties when the least number of people could come. So if you're a parent, take it and run. It's a great technique. So who am I and why am I here? Most of my work is behind the scenes. I have a great office companion, my dog Yeti. I am the conference organizer for Gig City Elixir and for LoneStar Elixir in 2020. And I am the Beam Radio podcast editor and the Groxio video editor. So if you're not familiar with Beam Radio, please go check it out. It is a phenomenal podcast all about Elixir and the Beam. And even as a non-technical person, I love listening to it. They're just excited and engaging with the things that they talk about. I am also married to this guy, Bruce Tate. He is the most prolific author of Elixir books, and I have been around this community since the beginning. But despite not liking crowds, I do love people and gathering and building community. So today I'm going to share some stories about creating opportunity, navigating some hardships, and fostering belonging. First of all, let's get a working definition for what community is. So I have started using Claude. And I asked Claude, give me a working definition of community. So I'll pause to let you read this. I thought it was pretty good, right? A group of people, shared interests, values, experiences, they interact, they support. But I also told Claude I was speaking at an Elixir conference. So this is what Claude added. I thought it was pretty good. But what I loved about it was the ecosystem of relationships. Then Claude added this, which I thought was fabulous. So the spaces between the code. So that's what we're going to talk about. Many years ago, Bruce was part of a traveling conference called No Fluff, Just Stuff. And with part of this conference, because we have always been really interested in hospitality, we would often have the speakers over for dinner. This also extended then to when LoneStar Ruby happened. We would have speakers in. With the first Elixir Conf, we would have speakers in. And through this, I got to meet some great people. I got to meet Stu Holloway, Dave Thomas, Jose Valim, Robert Verding, Chris McCord, Eric Meadows-Johnson. All these people have come to my dinner table, and it has been wonderful. I often wondered about Abigail Adams, right? And wondered how she felt at the founding of the country with the people that were around her dinner table or talking to. And these big conversations with these people were creating the future. And it's remarkable to watch it happen in real time. And it's remarkable to see you all as a result of all those conversations. During one of these events, I was able to sit on our deck with Dave Thomas. And it stunned me that Dave Thomas would take time to sit and chat with me. And we talked about photography, anything but code, right? I didn't have anything to offer for code, but we talked about human stuff. And when John Hughes from Haskell came to our conference, I spent an afternoon at an art museum with him. And these lovely experiences allowed me to get to know people on a human level and on a relational level, and they influence how I run a conference. So let's go back a few years. Bruce and I spent most of our adult years in Austin. We fed the fire ants and the bluebonnets with the kids. We cheered on the Longhorns. We watched our oldest play lacrosse in high school and at Southwestern University in Georgetown, and our youngest raised goats and a steer in high school. But in 2017, 4 days after our youngest graduated from high school, we moved to Chattanooga. Chattanooga is a lot like Austin about 20 years ago. Beautiful downtown. It's along a river. We have good music, good food, and all you people from Austin will know we have a lot less traffic. So it's a lot easier to navigate. And after leaving his successful startup based in Austin in 2018, Bruce founded Groxio. From the beginning, Groxio was founded around the ideas of belonging and community. Many years ago, Bruce had been at a conference in Europe, and it was stunningly homogenous. And we wondered about building a community that might reflect our larger world. We decided to offer parity pricing for our self-paced Elixir video lessons online, and we would include 2 seats in our small group trainings for non-traditional people in tech. And it worked. People from all walks of life entered the job market with connections to their cohort. We saw relationships form and careers take off. Now in 2018, Bruce also formed an in-person mentoring group called Elixir Chat as part of Groxio. The group was made up mostly of people new to programming, and they met in person weekly at a local meetup space that was free. And this ongoing and open community is supportive. Curious folks are welcome, and some come from coding backgrounds, and some are just starting out. There is permission to be vulnerable and understand that learning and mistakes and struggling are all part of learning. So in 2018, Bruce also thought we should start a conference. And I thought he was crazy. I have a meeting planning background, but not like that kind of meeting planning background. And we didn't know the first thing about doing it. One of the major purposes of the conference was going to be to put the mentoring group in the room with some of the best programmers in the industry. And it would deepen connections for everyone who attended. But we didn't know what we were going to do. Like, how do we convince folks to come to Chattanooga? And let alone do all the other billion things that it takes to run a conference. But we pulled a team and a plan together. Now keep in mind, we had just moved to Chattanooga in 2017. We didn't have networks, we didn't have a bunch of friends. I didn't know who to contact for any of this stuff. But my friend Jen, who's here, from Austin, had told me, she used to live in Chattanooga, and I met her here in Austin, and she told me, moving to Chattanooga, that if we wanted to start something, there would be people in Chattanooga that could help us start. It's a very collaborative community. So I took that encouragement and I reached out to every new person that I knew to volunteer at the conference. So we had greeters and servers, decorators, and people said yes, and they jumped in to help us pull this off. But getting the speakers, it all started with John Hughes, the creator of Haskell, and I'll let him tell the story.
Well, as a speaker, this is the only time I've been invited to a conference with the offer of a bottle of bourbon.
Oh, yeah.
And that was really fun. So Bruce said he had a nice bottle of bourbon for me first. And then he said, by the way, it would be so much more fun if you came to collect it yourself. I'm organising this conference. And that was just very, very sweet. I like that.
So that's how it started. And then Bruce cashed in all the goodwill from every speaker that he knew. So here, Steve Garrison is one of our neighbors in Chattanooga, and he's the one that offered Bruce the bottle of bourbon to give to John. And his sons started Garrison Brothers Distillery here in Texas. And I don't know if you know, but Garrison Brothers was the first legal whiskey distillery in the state. He had to break some laws to get it to happen, and it's a good story. I'll tell you another time. But what we loved about it was that it was our connection back to Texas to be able to offer this to John. So here are Bruce and Steve presenting the bottle of Garrison Brothers bourbon to John at the conference. So when we were planning the conference, since we were going to do this, I knew that I wanted the conference to have a sense of place because the setting influences so much of what happens at an event. We searched for locations, and I wanted to be downtown, near the river and near the aquarium, We found a spot. We worked with a local company that helped us look at a bunch of different things. But this particular space that we used would later become the Medal of Honor Museum in Chattanooga. But at the point that we got it, it was a big empty room. And I would really like to stress it was empty. There was no kitchen, no sink. We had to rent tables, chairs, tablecloths, like everything to make this facility work. And you don't know how much you need a sink. I'm not sure, you really don't. So our volunteer team, I don't even think there was an elevator. They had to run up and down stairs carrying gallon jugs of water to refill the coffee urns and the lemonade and the tea and the everything. And it was a supply closet. It wasn't even a legit sink to do this with. I can't believe we pulled it off. We didn't video the talks, but we did have this live recording of the Elixir Outlaws. And so there you've got Amos and Anna and Chris talking with Dave Thomas. So at the first Gig City Elixir, the mentees had their own classroom to break away from the conference and to be able to chat with some of the speakers. We offered a ton of scholarships to underrepresented folks, and everyone said that this was the most diverse group of attendees that they'd ever had at a conference, and we were thrilled. Okay, so let's talk about communities. One of the ways that communities stick is by having fun. And I was so grateful to have sat in on Jordan Miller's talk at Elixir Conf this year, where she talked about the ways that communities can build and stick. And so I love that, so this was really encouraging for me. And in 2019, for Gig City Elixir, we built a photo booth in our garage. Bruce and I built this thing together. And while the Elixir chat group, the coding group, worked on code for the camera. So one of the fun parts that the Elixir chat group decided they wanted to do was troll mode. So as any photo booth, normally it would just count down like 3, 2, 1, click, right? And then it would take a picture. But in troll mode, it would count randomly, and then it would just start snapping photos before anybody had a chance to pose. So it would be like 1, 5, 6, 4, 3, 7, click, right? You know, and so like you got some really funny things. So with those, we had some great photos, and we would then put them on the screens to play at breaks. So it was really fun. In 2020, here we are at Capital Factory. Brett, the guy in the middle, our MC for Gig City, and Giorgio, one of our sponsors, came to support us at LoneStar Elixir. We had the training day here at Capital Factory, and it's fun to be back. We hosted the conference itself at Alamo Drafthouse that year, and these folks who have worked with Bruce in 3 different contexts all came together to help. Sometimes communities have a favorite outfit. So one of my favorite sounds is the hum of conversation and the laughter that I get to overhear at these conferences. Sometimes the dev teams all come together to the conference, and here's the group from Zillion in Chattanooga at Gig City. Now, remember the idea of giving the conference a sense of place. One of the things that we learned to do is to have some downtime and some fun locally after the conference. And here we are with speakers on a Sunday touring Point Park at the top of Lookout Mountain. It's a Civil War battlefield. This year at Gig City, we also took some friends, speakers and attendees and sponsors to Rock City. So, how do we set the stage for belonging? It ties back into that sense of place. When we planned the first Gig City Elixir, I wanted to have a dinner party. And I wanted to have it in the middle of the conference, kind of just as a place for everybody to just settle and relax, and for the attendees to just visit. And I wanted to show off some of the local flair that we had. And so we had it at the Chattanooga Whiskey event space. We had food trucks, we had music from our MC, Brett, who is also a DJ, and we had the space set for roundtables to help facilitate conversations. I booked the space from 6 to 9 p.m., and I had to kick people out. They had been together for 12 hours, and they still had a lot of stuff to talk about. But so I learned. 2 years later, we moved the event to the Moxie as our conference hotel and our site for our dinner party. We still had a food truck, but we had it outside, and the folks could stay and socialize as long as they wanted. And they closed the venue down. This space and time allows for more team building, more social connection, more laughter, and more relationships. And because the Moxie has such great physical space to gather with couches and tables and games, the physical space sets the stage for those interactions to just happen. Now, in 2020, LoneStar Elixir was scheduled for the end of February. COVID had just appeared on the scene, and there was so much unknown. So Zachy was flying over from Japan, and he was worried about traveling to America. And he didn't know about the reception that he might receive coming here, being from Asia. And we assured him that we would receive him with open arms. It was a really special moment to be able to offer a place of welcome in such uncertain times. Elixir Chat also went online during the pandemic and has at different points had people from all over the world join. We even had so many from Africa that we created a separate cohort for them because of the time zone difference. And one of my favorite memories during COVID was the Christmas game that we all played together on Elixir Chat. And I don't know who came up with the idea, but it was like everybody had a budget of like $1 million to buy something for somebody else. And I don't remember if it was pre-assigned who you would buy it for, but I sat in on it, and as we took turns sharing about what we'd buy for each other, the thoughtfulness and the playfulness together was such a refreshing joy in such a hard season. Now, I love listening to Bruce give a training or work with the mentoring group because of the laughter and the joy that comes across. A coding mistake is not a big deal. I often joke that he's much like the painter Bob Ross. No coding mistakes, they're happy little birds. All of these gatherings that we participate in, local in-person meetups, online meetups, regional conferences, and larger events, have the potential to offer this kind of welcome. But we all know things can go really wrong when we're dealing with people. So many years ago, we were on a trip to Belize to help a church. This church was built over a trash heap, and they were sinking into the muck. They would just throw another piece of plywood, build it up. And the neighborhood was incredibly impoverished, located on the trash dump. And this photo is of an area that was just called London Bridges, right? London Bridges are falling down. So the kids had to pay for school. Many couldn't go. And dangerous people prowled around. You know, the kind that walk past you and it makes the hair on the back of your neck stand up, right? And I asked the pastor, as we were having dinner one night, what he saw as his neighborhood's biggest problem. And coming from America, in my head, I was thinking, it's violence, it's drugs, it's lack of education, it's poverty. But what he said is they don't respect each other. And I have thought about that for years. And in these crazy times, we have plenty to disagree about. And sometimes it's hard not to let it cross into disrespect. This is also a problem in tech communities. This is a tweet from Mats, who also loves Austin. But Mats is the kindest language creator of all time, right, from Ruby? But this last part, where it says, please be constructive, don't ruin our lives. Disagreement is how we wrestle together to better solutions, and disrespect is how we would lose the people that would help us get there. And this is poison. Conflict can rupture relationships and we lose our mooring. I generally attempt to avoid it and I run away. When my kids were in high school, there was a spat with a friend of me. Now we have 2 girls, right? So there was a friend of me. And I was about to go and park and go into a grocery store. And I saw the other mom walking in and I drove away. Like I can't even do it. So as I drove away, I was like, I can hear my own little NPR segment. I am a runner, but not that kind, right? It was hard. So now, Bruce has most of the bad risk factors for COVID, and in those early days in 2020, I was really, really worried. Our in-person gatherings shrank. We just had a handful of close family and friends that we would see. All the work went online. We didn't travel. Our community shrank, our relationships changed, and we were lonely and sad and afraid. I had nowhere to run to avoid the conflict, the disagreement, and the disrespect. So, here is my beautiful neighborhood. I say it's idyllic, really. It's on the Tennessee River, next to a river walk, beautiful, there are pretty gardens, and much of the reason that it's unified and lovely is that we have a homeowners association, right? The HOA enforces some restrictions for the benefit of all. Our HOA board is 3 people, one of whom lives next door to my house. So, I am a risk mitigator as well as a conflict avoider. But I'm also a person with a strong sense of get off my lawn, right? And so sometimes these things all come in conflict. So in the spring of 2025, right, fear of all the things compelled me to buy this garden box from Costco. So when the impending apocalypse was going to happen, I was going to totally feed my family from this 4-foot by 18-inch box, right? Except the HOA. The HOA said I couldn't put it beside my house in the sun. They said it had to go on my front porch in the shade. Well, if you know anything about gardening, that will not work, right? So I lost my ever-loving mind, you know? I was so embarrassed. But I saw David Brooks, a conservative New York Times columnist, a few weeks ago, and he talked about that in most conversations, they're the words that you're speaking, and then there's the stuff that's underneath, right? The other conversation that's actually going on. So the conversation that the HOA was having was, we don't want your wooden garden box beside your house. Nobody else has one. And it's just out of place, okay? But the conversation I was having was, why don't you want me to live, right? I will share everything with you. But in my incandescent rage, I never took a minute to recognize why I was crazy over that, let alone really be able to express it. And with all the years of being involved in the Elixir group, there was one moment of doubt for Bruce about belonging in the community. It became more work than fun, and lingering uncertainties about relationships and making a difference took a toll. He even started to think about where to go after Elixir, and it was really gut-wrenching. Rupture and repair, 2 words that David Brooks also talked about, which I thought was really beautiful. Repair happens on a number of levels. It's individual, it's team, and larger. Sometimes it's a change in perspective. Sometimes it's a change in place. When we are questioning our place and our belonging, we cannot wrestle with it alone. To make a better neighborhood, we need to be better neighbors. And to build a strong community, we need to constructively engage with it. So, in 2021, Bruce and I decided we needed a change. All of our work had gone online. We dreamed about what life could look like working remotely, and why not really step outside the box? What if we social distance in a boat? What if we were curious again? What if we really believed that there would be better days ahead of us? In 2022, Bruce and I traveled America's Great Loop by boat. The Great Loop is a 6,000-mile journey, and we traveled from our home in Chattanooga, Tennessee. We went down the rivers to the Gulf, down around Florida, up the East Coast through the intercoastal waterways. We went across Canada, through some canals, came down through some Great Lakes, and then back down the rivers home. It took us 9 months to complete. There were plenty of challenges, and we had some really awkward and hard conversations. They ran the gamut, anywhere from the value of COVID vaccinations to Civil War history that impacted us today, people considering making their last stands, and Alex Jones. But in the whole 9 months, out of thousands of conversations, there were only 2 times that I really needed to just find a way out. We practiced forbearance and openness. We were curious. We were from all walks of life and from different places. And because we were all away from home, and we humans are built for community, there was an openness and a willingness to really listen to one another, to respect each other. The common ground that we all had was traveling via boat, and it was always what we came back to. Now, most of the loop, you were doing it alone on your own boat, but you were not on your own because there are usually other boaters nearby, right? About 300 people a year do this, 300 boats. And so it's seasonal, and you kind of travel, not really with other people, but you will see other people doing the same trip, right? So in this picture, it's Bay Fin. It's up in Canada. It's a fjord that we were going to stop at on the way to the North Channel. And our boater community said it was beautiful, and we're like, we have to make some time to stop here. We're going to anchor. And it was magnificent, and it is extremely remote. We were so mesmerized by this beauty, right? It's spectacular. The sky, it's crisp, it's clear, it's gorgeous. But it's also really rocky, and we didn't pay attention because we were like, wow, look how beautiful this is. And all of a sudden, and we ran aground, damaging our motor. But in our kayak, our boat, right? So a COVID weakened Bruce had to row us back to the boat in wind and waves. And I was so worried that we were not going to make it. It felt like the perfect metaphor for the moment. We were exhausted, the work was so hard, and for every 2 rows forward, the wind and waves would push us back a little bit. It was a visceral picture of conflict, right? I even had to help. And, I just kept wondering, how are we ever going to make it back to this boat? So, repair takes work. It doesn't just happen. We got COVID twice on the loop. The first was the pleasant Canadian version. The second was the Delta variant, and Bruce was really, really sick. I had to walk a mile each way to the pharmacy, twice, with COVID, because I didn't want to give COVID to an Uber driver, right? So I'm making it work. So sometimes sacrifice is part of repair. You have to do hard things for somebody because they are really, really in need of help. Now, one of the most dreaded parts of the Great Loop is the crossing of the Gulf. We were traveling late in the season, and we expected to have to cross the Gulf alone. Truly alone, like no other boats, not even in sight. And this was pretty much going to be the only time that we were out of contact. Our cell phones weren't going to work, and we would have nobody near us. Our path was going to take us 22 hours through the night to go from Apalachicola to Clearwater. And I was really sure we were going to die. So we asked a friend to join us. So our friend Sam was more than game to come along for the adventure, and having him aboard helped me keep my wits. So not only did Sam join us, but we also had an angel appear before we left. Motor Vessel Spiritus arrived at our dock a few days before we could cross. And on this boat was the captain who wrote the weather blog for loopers to cross the Gulf. So I was like, hallelujah. So Bruce was teaching an Elixir class at the time on board, but he made time to go over Eddie's at like 6 o'clock in the morning so Eddie could give him a 2-hour lesson on reading the weather and how to figure out when to go, when not to go. So between Eddie and Sam and a nice plate of bakery goodies, I felt like we were going to make it. So sometimes repair means you need to call in reinforcements, to lean on the skills of others, and to let them help you. We went back and forth about the garden box, and it really started to impact how I saw my neighbors, not just how I saw the HOA. I was suspicious of who complained about the garden box, and it began to go beyond disagreement. Ultimately, after a few weeks of back and forth emails, Bruce and I moved the garden box to the front porch. because I was tired of spending the time and the emotional energy on resenting my neighbors. In order to have a better neighborhood, I wanted to be a better neighbor. Once the tree beside the deck filled in with its leaves and the box was in the shade, I pulled out the vegetables and I planted herbs and flowers, and they were lovely. So, I should confess here, we have since sold the house. They gave the garden box full of those beautiful herbs and veggies to another friend, and they sit on her front porch. Everybody's happy. But sometimes the best way to repair is to remember to look at the conversation below the words. What is being said? What is being heard? Am I hearing the whole story? Like the folks that helped us along our boat journey, in Bruce's moment of professional vulnerability and isolation, what mattered were the relationships in the community. He reached out and people reached back. Valuing repair means knowing relationships and community are worth cultivating and maintaining because we help each other move forward. At the second Gig City Elixir, Stu Holloway from the Closure community gave one of the best talks I'd ever heard. It was called Stewardship Made Practical. We did not record it. Rookie mistake. So the talk about conversations is still one of the most impactful I have ever seen. And the year he gave his talk, we brought him back to Chattanooga to give it at a meetup so we could record it. Part of repair is inclusion and sharing value and new ideas with your community. In 2023, Laura Peterson from the mentoring group wanted to come to Gig City Elixir. She had 2 kids and had just had a baby. So this would be number 3. And she reached out to see if we could help. We were so happy to have her that I found college-age daughters of a friend who then were able to watch her children, and the baby came along. The baby was held by attendees. The baby was held by us, the organizers, and we were all happy to have some baby time. And at the conference, she was able to make connections that helped her get a job, and then she's returned to Gig City as a speaker. Part of repair and belonging is helping solve problems for other people. Now, building a strong community takes a lot of work, but it is also delightful. Alexa, Frank Hunleth's daughter, joined Bruce's mentoring group when it went online during the pandemic. And we met up with them in Maryland while we were on our boat trip, and they presented Bruce with the best gift he's ever received, and of course, it was nurse-related. This is a printed circuit board with lights that show our great loop trip. And I'm gonna let Alexa tell you about it.
You can click all on.
We didn't know, we weren't sure where your path was, but I think.
And then we have a trial path.
It was so fun. Part of repair is being active in the community, learning together, creating together, and if you are lucky enough, you get to see those successes, and it is delightful. We had a dream, we gathered folks to help it happen, and when it did, we cheered. We build community by inviting others in and celebrating each other. Now, back when Bruce was with COVID on the kayak, trying to row us back to the boat, when we got back to the boat, we were so grateful to see another boat in the anchorage with us. It was our friend Ron. And Ron came over that night and his wife to just talk, and we started to talk about what life would look like when we went home. And I still like to be in the background, right? But I just wanted to sneak in. I didn't want to have fanfare. I didn't want people to know we were coming back. But Ron said that for him, he wasn't going to do that. And the reason he wasn't going to do that was because the people that couldn't join him were still part of his story. And including them in the coming home made them feel it. And so I was like, okay, I'll do it. So here we are, home, coming in with our boat decorated. We let neighbors know and friends know, and they came in and we celebrated, right? We didn't slip in under the cover of darkness. We gathered, and it meant something. That very same week, among unpacked boxes after nearly a year away, we also gathered with other boaters who had come through Chattanooga. Because the Great Loop is wonderful, it's great to celebrate, but it is also lonely. Ask anyone behind maintaining libraries, frameworks, or conferences, and they'll tell you the same thing. It's wonderful, and it can be lonely. So we gather. From far, far away, as far as Kenya and India and Croatia and Denmark and Mexico. We learn and are inspired together. We laugh together. And we struggle well together. This is from my favorite coffee shop in Montgomery, Alabama, Prevail Coffee. Our stories become part of the shared threads that bind us together. We all have a place here. You are the community, not just consumers of it. We build it and we share in its struggles and its successes. And this is why it matters for each one of you to be at a conference, especially the regional ones. When we build ties, we make the community stronger, and we grow it by making space for more. You, each one of you, make our community stronger and better, and in our time of profound technology challenges and other challenges, these connections matter deeply. Build them, hang on to them, because together we prevail. Thank you.